Even though you record the call, I don't have any.
What is your employee number, ma'am?
I don't have any employer number at all. We are employment insurance benefit officer.
All right, okay? So your employment
and we don't have. The only thing I can give you is my name. It's Valerie.
All right, Valerie.
Yes, Valerie. So, Matt, you know what? I'm just gonna go talk to the employer again, and I'm gonna call you because right now I don't think that you are in a state that I can ask you any question.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so as an investigator, I have raised my voice to you. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so you would swear to that as an oath, as an investigator on the stand?
Actually, I am an employment insurance benefit officer. We are not calling our job investigator. We are not working for police or anything like that.
Well, you swore to me you were trained at
no, yeah, we may have studying in the past, but it's not required for our job.
No, I know one of the top ranking RCMP members. So if I get him to check out your credentials and say,
you don't have to do that.
All right, he's a federal investigator. That's what he's doing.
You know what? No, you know what?
This is very important, ma'am. If you're lying to me,
I'm feeling harassed right now, and I am terminated the call. I'm sorry.
I understand that, but
unbelievable. That is me starting a recording with employment insurance staff that are supposed to be or supposedly investigators. This is the kind of nonsense I've been dealing with from employment insurance for literally months and months. Now they've shorted me hours of payment. And it's pretty obvious when I apply, and I only apply when I know I qualify, right? Like, I've been working long enough, I should qualify for full hours and full insurance. Of course, they didn't. So I'm going to send this off to my MP's office, and this is kind of the nonsense that they've played with me as they send in these employment insurance investigators to determine whether I qualify for employment insurance or investigate my last employer or my employers that I'm trying to obtain work from in the auto or in the trucking industry that'll hire me and fire me the very first day. So I literally get hired, and then they tell me a bunch of legal stuff that never makes sense, like it's lies. We can fine you for breaking laws. And that's the employers fine the driver, the truck driver. I kid you not. This is the kind of nonsense that they do at trucking. I just got out of Highlight Motor Freight this week, where they hired me for one run and told me they were going to fine me $500 for touching my phone to get my CDC paperwork at the border. I was stopped in a lineup of traffic at the border. I reached down to get my phone and get my CDC paperwork for my dog. That is the only paperwork we have to have required to show that the dog has been immunized against rabies on both parts of the border. So here I go and get my paperwork, which of course is conducted on the phone to present to the federal officer at the border on the phone to get the paperwork, and my company told me they would fine me $500. I strongly protested this on that principle, and they turned around and terminated me the very next day. This is the kind of nonsense drivers experience at the workplace by these places monitoring us with cameras. They not only monitor us with cameras at our jobs, forward and back facing cameras, but they monitor us when we are getting changed with these cameras. If we're saying anything in private conversations, they're completely violating our rights on all given aspects of our rights. Do not be under camera in the workplace full time as federal drivers or federal motor carriers or commercial motor vehicles, essentially. So they're using insurance as an excuse to do it, that the insurance companies want them to do it. But the employers are physically the ones doing it I don't know who these employers are. Many of them are foreign guys that I wouldn't trust with $20, let alone my life. And they're monitoring us 24 hours, 7 days a week, which many of us, of course, have private phone calls that we're on and things like that. And they're monitoring us while we're on those very private phone calls, such as things to lawyers, right? My lawyer will call, and then all of a sudden they're violating my lawyer, my, my, my lawyer client privileges because they're monitoring it with these actual devices and hearing privilege to very private information, as such things as estates that I'm dealing with and such things as anything imaginable that I could be dealing with. It's ridiculous, the privacy violations that are going on and being allowed to go on currently by my federal government. Now, my privacy has been in question in this country since these rules have come into play. I don't find them adequate or decent in any way, shape, or form. And unfortunately, I believe the federal government has to make legislation about this kind of thing in federal legislation, in employment standards specifically. Now, do I mind a company monitoring my driving? Not truly, like I'm just driving. But if they're utilizing that information to play officer and fire the driver over them thinking they have officers' powers, well then yes, there's a problem with that. Because officers have a certain amount of discretion and have seen it all and have the common sense of what goes on in the courts truly compared to what goes on, say, in an employer's opinion. So there is no trial, but then they're subjecting people to being condemned at their livelihood by these employers for things that should be determined legally, that are primarily fine-based offenses provincially. So unfortunately, the employers are stepping over their bounds and pretending to be officers and enforcing the law, fining company drivers and owner operators, and you name it, they're trying to get away with fining us. So this kind of stuff, or being punitive with our employment over this, of course, which is just as radically harmful to us maintaining employment. Because of course people are going to get in your stopping distance while you're driving a transport truck. It happens every hour if you're driving in Toronto. You cannot keep people out of your stopping distance. So the problem here is not only is employment insurance taking employer sides, like this representative from employment insurance just took the French company that I was working for side immediately because she's a French woman. There's a severe amount of discrimination going on with this woman. It was obvious to me. It was very blatantly obvious that she was siding with the employer immediately. And this is where problems exist. Now, I understand employment insurance doesn't want to take accountability for this kind of behavior. And as soon as I was recorded, you could see her panicking because she'd already told me she was an investigator trained at Depot, which is the RCMP training facility out in Winnipeg, around Ring Road. Now, she improperly represented herself right there. An investigator will not do that. They have integrity. So right away, I know she's kind of, a big shot and trying to flex her muscles of the power of EI. And they cut me off of EI based on that principle for a number of weeks. And I want that made up to me. Now, currently, I have actually submitted a request for reconsideration concerning the hour or the amount of days that have been granted, and I would like that granted based on some of these principles of the extreme harassments I've experienced from their office. Not only that, but I literally have had months of complaints with EI, months and months and months of this nonsense. And it seems that the federal government's employees took special interest in us truck drivers who stood against the convoy when it came to concerns about our employment insurance being paid to us. which happens frequently to us because we're dealing with employers that are just as radically taking the liberal side on certain things. Now the problem is everybody knows we had that 3-week protest. They've even thrown our drivers into jail over simply protesting. That's all we did. Protested being placed under house arrest. Not to mention all these other mandates that were being imposed, like the right to travel. They were talking about cutting off travel in between provinces, and actually were trying to do it between Quebec and Ontario at one point, because they had actual roadblocks up in Ottawa trying to prevent people from crossing the borders into the province without being tested into Quebec. Not to mention native reserves. They were stopping us from going on to native reserves. Similarly, saying this is sovereign land, you can't enter without being vaccinated. Similarly, and this is, roads that we've paid for. This is travel we've paid for. Not just provincially, but federally. Federal 400 series highways are all federally controlled highways. So as truck drivers, we were seeing these flaws and all these problems that they were existing, and then they were going to take away our employment on top of it all because we weren't vaccinating after we were watching our families die from the vaccine. My own mother died and was denied an autopsy on top of it all when I requested one to the chief coroner's office in person over the phone. To the chief coroner, I wanted a pathologist to analyze my mother's death to determine what her cause of death was, because they were saying repeatedly that they obeyed the science. My mother was vaccinated 2.5 weeks previous, and I had strong suspicions that the vaccine had caused or contributed strongly to her death. This is the problems. Now I'm still dealing with an estate dispute as well, 4 years later. I finally obtained a lawyer apparently today who contacted me, and I'm hoping they handle this case. They haven't even talked to the opposing counsel yet. And when they do, I have a strong suspicion that they're going to dump me, and my right to trial and proper trial is going to be evaded again, because Mr. Melville, who's supposed to be an arbitrator for my situation, has repeatedly made me represent myself by pulling me into trials and making me represent myself without any counsel, and withholding and retaining all my finances from the estate to do so when I was supposed to be an equal executor and an equal beneficiary. And he keeps signing over money to the opposing side's counsel after my own counsel turned me away and fired me. Then my second counsel I had to fire because they were just making me pay rent at an estate when I was living out of a truck at $3,000 a month, because they're saying, well, you have property there. Yes, that's true. In one bedroom, I have property. In my old bedroom, that the property that's in there is mine. It's been my bedroom set since gifted to me 51 years ago, and I've lived in that room since. When I come home, which is usually around Christmas, I come home 2-3 days as a truck driver. I go into my home, and now I got to pay $3,000 a month rent because I have property there. It's absolutely ridiculous. Well, of course, even the division property is going to be mine, which, they destroyed a big screen TV, tons of property of mine. Like, oh, you have to move today. Well, here I'm struggling after 16 hours of work to move a TV because the police literally came over and threw me out of my house. That's not legal in any country for just police to come in and throw you out of your own home where you're living without a trial. But apparently now with arbitration, we're allowed to do that here in Ontario, Canada, or this court system, which doesn't seem right to me. They said they did it on a judge's order, and I'd love to know which judge kicked me out of my own home, and I've never had that judge's order of somebody kicking me out of my house. I didn't know that it was even legal. I was never served by a sheriff, never once met a sheriff, and that's supposed to be who does that stuff, to my knowledge, as a law and security graduate. But not once did I. I complained to the police about it, and they still threw me out of the house, the police, without giving me any day's notice or any day's rectification or anything. So I'm hoping this lawyer addresses some of that in these concerns and gets it strongly addressed. Because I've been homeless since February 7th. of this year, thrown out right before the big snowstorm of last year, and now I'm sitting out here in a big snowstorm of this year with a big buddy heater to heat my vehicle to live out of, and now I've been caused clots in my legs. So because of having to sleep sitting up, clots have formed in my legs as a 51-year-old man. There's a doctor in the States that I converse with that is swearing up and down that is protein shedding from the mRNA vaccine is the reason why I am having clots. And the clot is right through my full left leg from top to bottom. I mean, right from my ankle straight up to my groin. And it's just one big clot. I haven't been able to get medical treatment. The hospital phoned me about it one day and they hung up on my answering machine. I was out driving. I couldn't answer the phone. So not only that, but then my doctor turns around and my doctor literally tells me, well, you have to pay $25 for prescription refills to avoid fake refillers. And you missed an appointment back in August when I was suffering and just got out of the hospital that week. I think it was August 13th. I went to the hospital and had this determined. And he's saying I missed an appointment to come see him in August. So I don't even remember the appointment or recall it. But apparently I owe him $30 for fees when I'm living off of literally $343 given to me by welfare because the federal government of liberals made a big deal to employers of truck drivers that anybody who took part in the protest shouldn't even be employed because they refuse to vaccinate and won't comply with what we tell them to do. So now still I'm dealing with employers firing me over the same stuff and the same issues. And they'll use whatever excuse. No, you just don't fit in our company. You're not made for the company. Well, I was employed as a truck driver a hell of a long time before that. And now all of a sudden I'm not able to be employed? It's obvious discrimination and on an extreme level. Obviously. And I've brought discrimination forward against many of them, and they investigate it months later after it's fresh out of your mind. Now, this is problematic. It's more than problematic because it's affected my livelihood in an extreme way. So I'm trying to reevaluate my life and trying to get my life back on track so I can make a living and not have to live off 400 or 340 some odd dollars on welfare, which is absolutely ridiculous to try and live off that because it doesn't even barely pay for gas to keep my vehicle going and just the running around that I have to do down to Service Canada because, my last employer destroyed my computer and there's no recourse I can do against the last employer besides employment standards as an employee federally. Everybody will say, well, you have to go to the proper resources, which is employment standards. Well, I go to them and they say, well, there's nothing we can do about them destroying computers or any of your property. They've literally destroyed TVs, all kinds of stuff of mine at companies, and they just get away with it. Food upon food, which is one of my biggest complaints with their conduct. When you're struggling to feed yourself, they will destroy your food and laugh about it. And they know you're struggling because they're the ones making you struggle. So there's some really big problems going on in Canada currently in the trucking industry, and not just a little bit. So much so that most drivers are very upset about it. Like, we're all upset. This country, we're trying to service this country. And that's what we're trying to do, and make sure everybody gets proper service and doesn't die on the highways. And all we get is bullshit handed to us nonstop, like this. It's absolutely ridiculous. I got more foreign people that can't speak the language getting kicked out of the States from Canada because they can't read Cat in a Hat than we can count. And they still won't hire Canadians who actually do speak English and understand every road sign and are very proficient drivers, as we've been doing it for most of our lives in this nation. and between two nations. So it's become very radical, my treatment. And I want to get a job, man. I want to get something that I can do and support myself and support my family, guys. I just had an aunt die yesterday. She fell and hit her head and went on life support. And now she's dead. Like, literally the same afternoon she died. Her husband is supposed to be next, is what we're all expecting. And it's a failed medical system. It's just failed. You can't make it up. My father, he didn't get a PET test when he had cancer. They told him he was cancer-free for a year. And he drops at the table, and then it turns out, well, he's got brain cancer. It's riddled everywhere. Well, how long was that up there? It spread from his lungs. This is the same kind of crap we were dealing with over and over and over again. Well, they had him on immunotherapy, and they said it cured him. Well, immunotherapy. Immunotherapy, whatever they're calling it. The new experimental therapy that Carter was on, I believe. Jimmy Carter was on it for his brain cancer. So, yeah, it's unbelievable. And then we tried to keep him alive, and he died. Then my mom gets cancer. She gets past it. She beats it. PET test comes back clear. Great. She's going to live. 4 months later, she gets taken the vaccine, and 2.5 weeks after that, she dies. The only other problem with her is C. difficile. Only other problem. I asked for an autopsy. Can't get an autopsy. We obey the science. Can't get an autopsy, though. Holy smokes. I talked to a doctor in the States. How much does an autopsy cost? $9,000. That's all. $9,000. You can get done pretty much anywhere in any state. You have to shop around for it even. And they'll do an autopsy and determine whether it was the vaccine that killed her or not. Couldn't get that done. Not in Canada, not with my system. To determine whether there was a malpractice suit here. Or some kind of misconduct by my government. And by my medical system towards my family. Can't get that done. I got to rely on guys like Dan Hartman who get approached by a lawyer down in Cambridge. His son died because he wanted to play hockey and shot himself with a vaccine. Even Dan Hartman saying he told his son not to take it. Said, well, online there's all kinds of reports, and told his son not to take the vaccine, just like I told my mother not to take the vaccine. And then 2.5 weeks later, she's dead because she said, I want to get things back to normal. Vaccine for COVID. And now all these reports, now they're saying like 1 in 60,000 deaths occurred down in the States. And with their Senate trials, lots of stuff has come out that they're blocking Canadians from knowing, which are very severe trials. They invited Dr. Jordan Peterson down to their state Senate trials to talk about what was being conducted in Canada against doctors who spoke up out against it, which was a complete embarrassment to Canada and the States. Complete embarrassment to Ontario's licensing medical system. Complete embarrassment. Now, because we had people dying like my mother, and not a single thing is being done about it truly. Oh, we'll throw you a $50,000 life insurance policy. Well, my mother's pension would have been more than that if she lived and be like the rest of my grandmother and her great-grandmother, which they both lived in. My great-grandmother lived into her hundreds. My grandmother lived into her late 90s. Well, my mother wasn't scheduled to die at 72, I could tell you that much. And she did. Every one of her family has lived into their at least late 80s, her father included, 87. Every one of her family, every one of them lived into their 90s almost, the women. My mother is the first one who hasn't, and it's after the vaccine, and I'm not supposed to suspect something? Well, I wouldn't take it. And now look, this is what it's gotten me for the last 5 years of my life. 4 years of my life since that occurred. Since they introduced it. Vaccine. And I still can't find employment after I stood against the truckers and the Truckers Alliance. And they figure out who I am, and I stood up against them online and said, no, guys, your numbers are off that you're telling the media. The media was told by the Truckers Alliance and the Trucking Association that 99% of drivers were vaccinated. And then I pointed out to them right on CBC where they were stating it. Yeah, then why is it that 57 to 58,000 truck drivers are rolling across the Midwest going into Ottawa to take over Ottawa to protest? Are those 58,000, like when you compare the numbers of the 347,000 total truck drivers there are in the country, is 58,000 of them saying they're not going to take it enough to prove that your 99% is a little bit off? Because they don't want to take it. And they're coming to let you know. And they're letting you know why, because of all these people that died that they got on billboards and stuff that they're going to be planting on the front gates of Parliament. They ended up having to put it on the wall because they weren't allowed on the property of Parliament, or they'd be charged with trespassing. It's ridiculous for our own country. Nightmares that were going on then. Normally it's you can't wear a mask on Parliament Hill. If you do, you get charged. At this time, now they want you to wear a mask because you will be charged if you're not wearing a mask. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. Nonsense. It's your own personal choice. It's a free country. It's supposed to be a free country. It was once. But now, apparently, livelihood is expendable. Everything is expendable. If you protest against the government, you can expect jail time, apparently. Now, I know those sentences, their lawyers are going to appeal them. The JCCF are in there appealing them. But some of the key members didn't get legal counsel given to them, for sure, and are trying to raise funds to get their legal counsel now still. Lots of people like me were thrown to the wayside. We can't even get counsel to handle our civil litigation matters with my parents' estates in this country. A right to fair trial is no longer existent in Canada where my situation is concerned. I haven't been able to get a lawyer until today for something that happened 3 years and 4 years ago, and I've tried every avenue to get a lawyer to represent me. Every avenue imaginable. I've contacted hundreds and thousands of lawyers. You can see the reviews I've left online of them. Every time they refuse me based on what's gone on. A right to a fair trial is not what I've experienced so far. And they keep fining me. The courts fine me. Oh, 20,000. He's vexatious because he showed up without a lawyer. Ha ha ha. To civil trial. Well, that's ridiculous. They're the ones forcing me into showing up without a lawyer. I know I'm not a lawyer. I'm not trying to be. I submitted information. They rejected the information I submitted that was all factual. All of it. Factual. Just facts that I can prove. I have witnesses to the situation. Multiple in cases. Multiple witnesses. Impartial witnesses, even. To everything I stated to the courts. Everything. I always made sure, officer, can you please witness my phone call with the chief coroner's office? Officer Gills? Yes, sir. I will stay and witness it for you. So I have an officer witness to that phone call. Constable Gills. Waterloo Regional Police. You think they come out of the woodwork to show up at a trial like that? No, of course not. Where are they? Hiding. When this kind of thing goes on, where the court should be aware of this stuff and should be addressing it accordingly, but they won't, because it's liberal appointed judges. My judge was appointed by liberals and was a military liberal judge, as a matter of fact, which is how he moved over to this position. He was appointed a liberal military judge by a liberal government. And now he's going to throw trucker convoy guys under the bus, behind the scenes. Isn't that nice? So they can't even get their inheritance that's supposed to be guaranteed by a will and last testament. That's how corrupt this nation has become. I watch criminals walk free, and I can't get my inheritance. I watched the police show up, and the only thing they're concerned about with me living outside of my house and minus subarctic temperatures, minus 38 in a major snowstorm, where are your firearms? That's what they're concerned about. Well, you're going through a hard time. Well, I'm not going to kill anybody. I'm not like that. I'm a respectable gentleman. Proper, decent, kind. I don't want to do that ever in my life. And why would you be fearful that I would do it? Do you think this is enough for somebody to do that to somebody else for? You know, throwing them in the streets? I would say so. I could understand how they would be fearful of firearms. I can. But here's the thing. Why would they do that to somebody to cause that? Is that what this free system is about? Ensuring people get homeless? This system has been absolutely astonishing. Absolutely astonishing to what it's done to truck drivers. People like Chris Barber, who was in trial this week to have his truck seized. They're going to try and take his truck as a symbol of the protest. We got to make sure we seize it. Mao Zedong, is that who was the last person was that did something like that? China? Killed off millions of its own citizens on it? And then tried to hush it up? Is that what went on during COVID? That's my question. Second thing. Guys like Pat King are rejected by even the JCCF. Well, he's racist. He was labeled racist. And some member of Diagolon, which is some racist organization that the media said he was a member of. Well, you just get condemned in media now, and then all of a sudden that's the rule of law? Media says so it must be true. They dragged his name through the mud on the media, Pat King. And I never saw him do a racist thing ever. But stand up for his own countrymen, I can tell you that much, for Canadians. And every race. Imagine that, when he was doing what he was doing during the COVID crisis. Every race was at that protest, I can tell you, for sure. Every race, every culture that's in this country was at that protest. And they labeled that man a racist. And every one of us racist. Well, I don't think you can be racist and live in the trucking industry. I can tell you that much. It's pretty difficult. Because the vast majority of guys are foreigners. The vast majority. As a Canadian, I am definitely the minority in that industry. I can tell you that flat out. I don't know any other language but English. I don't want to even know French. And I do know a little bit from school, but very little. I took basic French just to get through the program, because as an English culture, I should have a right not to learn French. The same rights they're acquainted that they are allowed their language rights, I should be allowed that for myself. And I explained that to every language teacher, and they could see the bias in it and avoided the situation, the subject matter. But that's what Canada imposes on the English here. Well, I'm not allowed to my culture and my language, considering that, we won the 7 Years' War as English. And the Paris Treaty dictated that Canada would be English. It was given to England in the negotiations of that war's end. In cordial, official manner, and political manner. Well, now as a Canadian, I have to learn English or learn French, and they don't have to learn English. That seems like a win to me. That was worth one of the most bloody battles in history, which is the 7 Years' War. That, I had family members literally die in. So I lost lineage that would have been here in this country if they weren't dying in that war. Same with World War I and World War II. I had family die in both. You can look up the Commonwealth War Commission's grave sites. So why am I sitting here in a free Canadian nation that was once a British Commonwealth nation, and not recent history, both world wars That British flag was flying in the corner of our flag. It wasn't the same Canadian flag you see today. And now all of a sudden, because my family was that way, all of a sudden we were honorable, went off and fight. Now we're the condemned in my own nation because I got to stand up to my own government to say, hey, listen, you're being wrong. You can't throw our citizens away in prison. It's a human rights thing. You can't use their homes as a prison for yourself, not allow them clothes shopping, which is a basic necessity. That's what caused my mother to take the vaccine, was she couldn't go clothes shopping. That's all she wanted to do. That's what she's done her whole life. And when you took that away from her, she wanted to do whatever it would take to get that back. That's how ridiculous it is. Just the little things that they wanted, the little things that were denied, that caused them to risk their lives. Imagine your own mother taking those risks and what you would be willing to do to rectify that in the future of this nation. I sit here and watch some of the nonsensical threats I receive online and the people that were telling me, oh, you're a liar, and the threats I was receiving for being in the protest. Oh, I'll come down there and kill you. All kinds of nonsense was said to me. Well, okay, come then. You come try and kill me, whatever. Now my police are trying to kill me by making me live out of a vehicle where I got these damn blood clots, and they're going to use the medical system to do it. Well, if he can't sit up, he'll eventually get a blood clot in his leg. If he gets out there in the cold, the elements will eventually get him. That's how they're killing all of these homeless. And there's good homeless on these streets. There's a working class kid living behind the Shoppers Drug Mart down here. He's a very good kid. I threw a candy at him. He didn't even flinch a bit, grabbed the candy out of the air as I pitched it, like literally from across what would be a baseball field. The kid's got the reaction time of an amazing kid. He can work. He thinks. He's kind. He's never been a problem. And he's out here sleeping on friggin' wood crates that he's got set up so he can keep out of the wet and the cold, and trying to cover himself with tarps and stuff so he can just stay dry and have a little bit of shelter. Now it's wintertime. The shelters are full. We have no shelters in Ontario. Our housing is gone. None of us have housing. Some of these guys who have solved the problem are getting fined. There's a guy down in Hamilton who had many trailers he was building for the homeless. And he would park them anywhere around town, and the city banned him from doing it, from providing shelter to the homeless. Now, why would a city do that? They're killing people. When this guy seriously is trying to help. Because there is a major homeless problem. And not all of them are bad or like you think, that are beggars or anything, because I won't beg. I will never take anything from anybody without giving something back eventually. I've taken loans from friends, and I'll give them always a little bit of money extra back to cover the loan. Here's an extra $5. Go buy yourself a beer. Thanks for the loan. $40 that my friend lent me this week because the government welfare office couldn't get me my money in time for me to move out of my storage. And they didn't give me my emergency money for another 2 days when I requested it. So I had no money for fuel to get my stuff out of storage before my storage date was done. I had to phone them to find out even when my storage date is, because now they don't do it from month beginning to month end. They do it from the date you start. So I got to remember dates I start, apparently now, at the U-Haul. And then they're going to screw me for another $370 that I don't have to pay them. So I moved out to a storage in Cambridge that was double the size because they threw all my stuff and were trashing all my stuff out of the estate home. They were going to throw it all into the garbage if I didn't get another storage unit. Now I'm going to be struggling to find enough money to pay a $420 storage unit out in Cambridge, which is double the size, so I can put all my stuff in it at least and not have all my property destroyed. And I'm trying to sell all that property. I got it all up online, but nobody can buy it because nobody has the money to buy that kind of property. That's how drastic my conditions are currently. I had an employer that was supposed to send me out to work today. On the same day my aunt dies, they fire me. That's the kind of Canadian decency that exists because of these foreign people that have come in here. These are all foreigners that have done this. I said to them, my mother, my grandma, or my aunt just died yesterday. She fell down, died. Well, you're fired. Not, well, we got a job for you. At least you'll be working. A job with a video monitoring even, that I'm willing to sacrifice my own privacy to try and stay employed, which is a undignified issue completely. It's undignified. And Canada shouldn't even be going on. Well, you gotta allow some girl in an office to watch me change so I can keep a job. That's ridiculous. And that's what they're doing. You guys are absolutely assholes for allowing this to go on at the federal level and not saying something about it. I am so dismayed at what my government has become. It's disgusting. Disgusting. And unless something gets done about it in a very quick manner, there's going to be a real big problem soon. Because we're at our wits' end. All most drivers are. All right, there's my 40 minutes for you today. I hope you review it and listen to it.